How I was a Marine Corps officer for 10 years, including a deployment to Iraq. I was also on State Department teams via the U.S. embassies in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I've utilized classified information for a good portion of my adult life. This idea that somehow WikiLeaks, particularly the Iraq war logs, fundamentally undermined U.S. security or put lives at risk is belied by the various research and reports and studies and investigations that the U.S. government did. The Pentagon did an investigation led by General Robert Carr that found no one was harmed from any of the WikiLeaks releases. And similarly, investigative journalists have reported on the government task force, the federal government task force that covered 20 different federal agencies that found the same thing too. No documented case of harm came from the release of these documents. They will oftentimes say things like it may have caused harm, but there's always that qualifier in there. And that's the truth of the matter, is that the only harm that came from the release of the WikiLeaks documents, from the exposure of what the United States was doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, in Syria, throughout the Middle East, throughout the world, was the harm that came to the United States reputation by the exposure of policies that were criminal, policies that were incredibly counterproductive, and policies that undermined any type of American sentiment for why these wars were necessary or why those wars should have continued. So the idea that the WikiLeaks exposures put Americans in harm's way, or they put our allies in harm's way, is undone by the very information that the U.S. government, including the Pentagon, presented. And this was presented at Chelsea Manning's trial, as well as at Julian Assange's extradition trials in Britain. So in both American and in British courts, the U.S. government has admitted that there was no harm, no one came to harm from the WikiLeaks releases.